So when we left, we had put the website together using some divs to kind of make it start to look like a website. Here we've got a couple of floating divs, a float left and a float right. This is where we anticipate our menu going. This will be a date label, so it'll always have the current date and time, the footer, and then this will be the content. So on the default page, on the opening page, it'll have maybe some introductory information in there. On the other pages, then it will have grid views and detailed views, and then the inserts as we're moving through the page. So today we're going to, in this video, we're going to just work some more at refining this and to make it start looking like a website. Again, the colors are pretty garish, but they're to help you distinguish between what's the menu div, what's the date div, the content, the footer, and the container div. So after we have this basically built, we could go back into our style sheet and just with 3 or 4 simple entries change the pages, change the colors for all the site. I'm going to do some pretty heavy cutting and pasting because most of this should be familiar. It's going to be using some ASP labels with a little bit of code behind. It's going to be using some CSS and lists to format the menu and those kinds of things. So I'll explain it as I'm moving through it, but I'm going to do a fair amount of cutting and pasting. The first thing I want to work on is this menu. So let me get the website open. And I'm going to first build out the default page, and then after that go through and make the modifications on the other pages. So here I have the menu div. I went to List-O-Matic. It's one of the resources listed on the classes resource page on Icon, and I found a way to take a simple list and turn it into a menu. And I'm using Fat Eric's pipe list as my my starting point here for my menu. So I'm just going to copy the HTML and paste it, and then I'll just clean this up a little. Make it a little more human readable. And I'm going to clean this up to the little d. I've changed that. And the next thing, I'm going to grab the CSS that formats that list. And I'm going to paste this in the style sheet, and I'll just come down a little bit. And notice I've put in some comments on just where I got it, that it's the start, and that down here it's the end of it, just to keep this kind of together and make it easy to use. And again, this is pretty much cut and paste right off of the List-O-Matic. So it's just an easy, quick way to get a menu going. So let's see what we have now when we refresh. Go. Now we can see our menus in place. Home is this page. View all states seems to be working. Add a new state seems to be working. Okay, so our menu seems to be doing okay. And again, I'm working on the default page, and then I'll go back and clean up the other pages after that. Next thing I want to do is work on this date label. And here I'm going to add in, I'm just going to get in the middle here and add an ASP label. I'm going to give it a unique ID on this page, so I'm going to call it LBL date. And I'm going to take out the text so it's set to blank. Okay. Now I'm going to get into the code behind for default. I'm going to create a new subroutine. It's going to be a page load event. So when the page loads, we're going to LBL date, the text property, set that equal to date, time, now, too long, date string. And I'll save this up. And I want to look at this page now, and hopefully this has changed to a date. And it has. That looks good. Next thing I want to work on is this footer. So I've got some text already pre-written here for the footer. So I want to get down here in the footer div. You can research some of the wording down here, but basically it wants to say copyright. I need it to say copyright. I want to display the copyright symbol, which I can do with using some special text there. And again, these different symbols, you can find those in the class resources page. The other thing, I need to always have the current year. So that would mean I might have to go through my site and update it every year to make sure that the current year is displayed there. I'm going to do a little trick and stick in an ASP label and just pull the year. So it's always current. And I'm going to give this a unique ID on the page. I'm going to call it label copy for the copyright label. I'm going to blank out the text to get rid of that. So now this will pull the year. So it'll say copyright, the copyright symbol, the year 2011, and then who is it copyright? Mike Colbert, 6K 183. I want the ampersand sign, the and sign there. Okay, and I'll save this up. Now I need to populate this, so I'll get back into the code behind. It can be the same page load routine. So I will LBL copy text, and it's going to be very similar. Only I just want the year this time. So I'll save this up, look at it in the browser. It looks pretty good. That's what I like. Now in 2012, theoretically this is going to change to 2012. 2013, that'll change to 2013. I don't have to go back and edit the page. It's pulling it. I might like to have that centered up, so I'm going to get into the style sheet for the footer and just do the text align. Set it to center. There, I like that. Next thing I want to do on this default page is work on the what's actually being displayed in the content div. So there's no need to have those links in there. Those are just kind of placeholders, so let's get rid of those. I want to put a welcome, so an H1 welcome to let's have a look at that. It's looking good. The other thing, I want to stick an image in there, so I'm going to create a folder called images where I stick the different photos and things like that I want to display, or graphics. So I'm going to, I created the folder. If I get down here to my desktop, here's the folder I just created. I have this United States map I'm going to drop into place. So I just copied it into that folder. Now when I go back here, it's not displaying, so I'll need to refresh. Okay, and there it is. So now I can add that. I'm going to stick that in a paragraph. with a class of called centered. And then I'll stick in the image. I have to give it an alt. And I have to give it a title. And when I've done those things, when I hover over it, I should see the tooltips on all the browsers, since I'm using alt and title, which is important. Since I'm using alt, it should be compliant. So I need to create this centered class now. I try to keep my classes together and my IDs together. So centered, and let's do text align, centered. Okay, so let's see what happens now. Excellent. I would like this maybe to come over and be centered, so I can just get into the code. For that H1, again, I've created a centered class, so I can class equals centered. Save that up. Excellent. So this is starting to look the way I had hoped. So now that I've got these basically set up, the content will be different across all of the pages, but this menu, the date, and the footer will all be the same. So I can go in and I will just copy the menu and the date. So everything from container to content, all that stuff up in the header piece there. Now I can get into new state and just replace that placeholder content with the real content. State details, I can do the same thing. And states, I can do the same thing. Okay. Refresh the page. So now when I go to these other pages, this menu piece should be in place. View all states is in place. But notice this is not working correctly, the label. So the label's in place, it's all working. I need to add it into the code behind. So I'm just going to grab the code behind I put on default and add that into the code behind for these other pages as well. Again, no particular order. It's event driven, so when it needs it, it will call it. When the event fires, then the routine will run. Okay, let me go back and try it now. Yes, so I've put in the header content, but I've not put in the footer content yet. So let's go back to default. Default.aspx, and let's get this footer content. Okay. Let me try it again. And now the menu's in place, the date is in place, and the copyright is in place across all of the pages. Okay, that's working correctly. We have this extra little piece down here that we used before, but now that we've got kind of a menu system in place, we don't really need that. So let's go back and clean that up. So default is already clean. New state has a little bit of a menu down here that we can get rid of. State details, we can get rid of the menu stuff. Making sure to leave this div, this closing content div. There to get rid of. Okay, let's review the site now. That's gone. So if we're at home, we have a nice page. View all states. We still have one on the view all states. Add new state, it's gone. State details, it's gone. Okay. View all states. It was gone, it just wasn't saved. Now it's gone. So things are cleaned up pretty good there. When we edit, that seems to be working correctly. However, when we delete, watch how the response right is up here. It doesn't happen. It doesn't occur where we would like it to. See how it's up here? We would like this to be in the div. So next, let's work on that. Okay, so that's going to be on the state details page, where that's coming back. We want to get just right above the details view, immediately above it. So right after the content is opened, but right before details view starts. Let's stick in another label. And let's call this LBL for label del state. And let's blank out the text. So it's given a unique ID, and we've blanked out the text. So now let's get into the code behind for state details. And here, instead of doing the response.write, let's actually write this into a label. So I'm just going to comment these out just to make sure that this works. So label deleted state. And let's try this one more time. Now hopefully when we delete the state, we'll see the message occur here in our div. Yes, we need to write it to the text property of the label. There we go. We delete Alabama, and we can see that now using the label we can write it in the div where we would like it to go. So we've added just a little more functionality to the page. We've kind of cleaned it up. We're using the labels. We're using variables. We're writing back into the divs. We have several things going on that's starting to make this a pretty functional site.